So today I'm going to do a quick refresher on biopsychosocial assessments. So if you need a refresher or you're kind of new to this and a little bit confused about what it entails, this should break it down and make it really easy for you. The main thing to know about biopsychosocial assessments is that there's really 5 P's to any good biopsychosocial assessment. So the first P is presenting problem. So when we think of presenting problem, we're thinking about, okay, what is the reason that they're coming into session today? Why do they seek out services? So for example, maybe you have someone come in and they're experiencing really intense depressive symptoms that are getting in the way of them showing up to work. Maybe they're getting in trouble at work and you are trying to help them with that. The second P is predisposing factors. So this is where we get to kind of be detectives in some way. We're really collecting a lot of history here and really exploring things like genes, factors that are biological, their upbringing, their environment, all of these things that play a role in how they're presenting today. The third is precipitating factors. So, what are some events that led to the presenting problem or really were contributing factors that we definitely shouldn't ignore? So, an example for this might be okay, my client isn't showing up for work, they're having really intense depressive symptoms. Maybe a precipitating factor was that they recently filed for divorce, and that's really been affecting them and really just weighing on them when it comes to their mental health. As I mentioned before, I do specialize in trauma, so it's really important to note that there really is no time limit on these precipitating factors. And trauma and people who've been through trauma is a really ongoing thing that can affect people and really add a key component into understanding the problems that a client is currently facing. So the fourth P is perpetuating factors. So what's kind of adding fuel to the flame in this situation, right? So it could be a lot of different things. Maybe this person has a habit of forming really toxic codependent relationships. That could certainly be a perpetuating factor. Or maybe currently they don't have the healthiest coping skills. So they're currently using alcohol or drugs. Those certainly add fuel to the flame and essentially make the problem worse or at least more complicated. And number 5 is protective factors. And this is probably my favorite one because I really enjoy focusing on people's strengths and who they are holistically, not just the parts that they're struggling with, but the people in their life that are really supportive or the coping skills that do work for them that are really healthy, hobbies that add value to their life and make them happy. These all go into the protective factors and are really important to keep in mind when helping clients, especially when forming treatment plans and ways to manage negative symptoms that they might be experiencing. So for the client I mentioned before, maybe they already participate in yoga and that really does help their mental health. That would certainly be a protective factor. So those are the 5 Ps. And as long as you're really sticking to this, you should get that holistic, clear snapshot of a client when you first start working with them. Now, a couple things. One is these tend to be long, right? As human beings, we have a ton of history, we have a ton of information that comes with us. And a lot of times clinicians will be curious, how do I shorten this up? How do I make it so, I'm not interviewing this person for like 2 hours? So my tips for that would definitely be to try to get as much information you can before a session. So if you have any sort of intake packet that they can fill out ahead of time, that you can go through and then just ask follow-up questions in person. I feel like that could be really useful. Another thing that is really useful that I'm going to show you in just a moment is we now have AI tools to help us with biopsychosocial assessments. So one thing that I really enjoy using is dictation-based AI to do progress notes, biopsychosocial assessments, what have you. So with this method, what you're doing with your client's consent, of course, is you are recording the interview or the biopsychosocial assessment, and it is taking all the information and plugging it into correct formatting for you so that you have a nice, clear biopsychosocial assessment. You're not having to hop on your laptop after session and type all of this out. It does it for you. And that's really awesome, especially because if you've done this before, you know that biopsychosocial assessments tend to be a little bit narrative based, meaning really explaining somebody's history, somebody's story. And we really want to be sensitive to all the important pieces. We really want to make sure that we're catching cultural pieces. We really want to make sure that we're getting all of those details. And this method is a way to be more accurate about it and to keep everything nice and organized. So I just want to show you really quick a biopsychosocial assessment example so that you can get an idea of what this could look like in case you decide you want to have a dictation-based intake session with your client. So let's jump to it. Okay, so here is an example of a biopsychosocial assessment through Mentalyc. So what I did is I had recorded when I was doing the assessment, and I uploaded the recording to Mentalyc, and this is what it generated for me. So it took down all the key details here. And if you go down, there's a little area for demographics. If there's anything that's missed, what's really cool is you can always type it in. The next area, we have the presentation or the presenting problem, talking about the chief complaint. We're adding some quotes that the client actually said, some impairments and challenges, and the symptom that is causing the most distress right now. And we have details about the onset, the frequency, all of that good stuff. Next up is predisposing factors, that second P. So in here, we're talking about family mental health history. So talking about mom's diagnosis with OCD, previous mental health treatments, biological factors, social factors. So the next section is the third P, so precipitating factors. So the client reports she attempted to seek treatment before, but the wait time was too long. And in her upbringing, seeking psychological help was considered taboo. So that's really important to keep in mind. This definitely could have contributed to this just kind of snowballing for this person. Perpetuating factors. So, what really is, throwing fuel on the fire, so to speak. And that was losing her job. It has made her anxiety worse. And now she's really struggling to find a job within walking distance. And then the last part is strengths and resources. So those are those internal strengths. So she has resilience, the external strengths. She is engaged in therapy. She also has a spouse that has been super supportive during this period of time. And then the quick mental status exam and risk assessment. So just pulling in those things that were mentioned or not mentioned, putting in the diagnosis appropriate for this client, and rationale behind what type of therapeutic approach or modality that we are using here. And I think we're going to go with CBT. So that's it. It really simplified the process for me so I could just focus on the client. And now I can just save that to my records and I am done. Hopefully this gives you guys some ideas about how to simplify doing your biopsychosocial assessment.